G'day friends and foes. Oops. Forgot I've got a different microphone plugged in. G'day friends and foes. Arjay Martin here with Arjay's TINLA, or This Is Not Legal Advice, episode 40. And nor is it legal advice, it's my opinion only, blah blah blah. So in this episode, I'm going to be discussing a little bit about what's happening with tomorrow's COVID lockdown illegality / mandatory vaccination legality court case. Is sound good? I hope so. But anyway, so tomorrow is a application by the police officer that I am suing, which is Sergeant Arundel. It's publicly known who the person is since it's the name of the court case. And then also other respondents to the action are Dr. Jeanette Young, who is the Chief Health Officer of Queensland, whose COVID directions they are, as well as there's other reasoning behind suing her as well, such as I put in for COVID direction exemptions for political protest since back in, when was that? Maybe applied for in May, from memory, and that's been ignored, etc. There's also suing the state of Queensland, again, for the COVID directions, which I submit are completely illegal, not only constitutionally, but they're also inoperative. They have never been gazetted in the state of Queensland, which is required under law. Normally I waffle on about, which sections, like Section 47 and 49 of the Statutory Instruments Act 1992, Queensland, but that might well turn some people off. And it's very bright here, so it's hard to read the screen. Borrowing a ring light from someone so you can see little circular lights in my eyes. And also a better microphone that hopefully sounds a lot better than just using the phone. So with the case tomorrow, I've checked the court listings and it is listed for 10:15 a.m. in courtroom 13, level 3 of the Southport District Court. I doubt that at least many people would be allowed in, besides journalists, etc. But, if people want to visit out the front of the courthouse and I can go have a chat to the people afterwards, and that's fine, and you can do that. But like I said, I doubt that spectators or supporters will be allowed in, despite it being against the concept of having open and transparent courts. But, maybe some of you watching are journalists or something like that and can go into the courtroom and, go there with your pen and pad, notepad that is, and report on it. GG said good luck, buddy, thank you. And we've got 11 people watching so far. So what else should I talk about? Do you have any particular questions? I can't answer everything that's asked of me potentially, but maybe I can. It depends on the nature of the questions. There is it is before the courts, but there is a scope of what I can answer and scope of what I cannot answer. But with the case, tomorrow is an application. So Tristan Cameron says, can we do this in Victoria? Yes, so I guess I will talk about why my case is so important. So as far as I know, it is the only court case within Australia that has ever been filed concerning the illegal COVID lockdown, COVID directions, lockdown. You have all these stupid things like border closures, and before that, and still in Victoria, you have, you can only travel 5 kilometres from your home. You can only, just clicking the wave button, you can only leave your home for 1 hour a day between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. in Victoria. for instance, unless you are an essential worker, and of course government workers are all essential workers, so they make laws that don't apply to themselves, of course. In Queensland, we used to have that you could only travel 50 kilometres from your home unless you lived in the middle of Whoop Whoop, or, the outback, whatever you want to call it. And then if you did live in those rural, like very, very rural areas, then you could travel 500 kilometres. That's if you don't have, medical facilities or whatever nearby. So with my case, basically, just reading some things. So Elsa says, Alyssa says that she stopped driving to write but listening. Good on me and good luck to me. And she likes to follow me or something. Like I said, it is very hard to read this screen with this very bright light shining on my face. But yeah, so Glenna asks, if I'm successful, will there be a precedent set? Yeah, so basically, if I win the whole case, and it depends on how I win the case, because I can either win it in a district court or, the Supreme Court of Queensland, or there is an option that the case will be removed to the High Court. And I'll say about that afterwards if someone reminds me. So with my case, basically it has multiple components to it. One is concerning torts against myself that the police officer and others have done. So I was followed, for instance, along with a couple of other people, one of whom is watching at the moment. There's about 25 police officers in Surfers Paradise for an unauthorised protest, which is still legal in Queensland. The difference between an authorised protest and an unauthorised one is that there is basically protection for authorised ones against obstruction. So just say if you had 500 people turn up, if it wasn't for these COVID periods, then if they were crossing a road and the little man was red or whatever, then they could cross the road without worrying about getting fined. Basically, you notify the police that you are going to have a protest and they can make arrangements. And that case has given me standing to challenge the COVID directions as a whole, because the police opposed an authorised protest at Surfers Paradise based on COVID grounds, and the COVID grounds are unconstitutional as well as inoperative, I submit, and that is before the court. So this is my opinion, if you want to look at it that way. And basically, when you have a court case that involves the Constitution or its interpretation, then you have to provide what's called Section 78B notices, and that's 78B of the Judiciary Act, and that informs the Governors-General of each state and territory, as well as the federal one, that, hey, look, I have this case involving the interpretation of the Constitution. So in particular, for my case, Section 69, concerning the transfer of quarantine from the states or the colonies that became states to the federal government. Therefore, arguably, they do not have any quarantine power whatsoever, which all of these COVID directions are quarantine power related. Because, it's to do with quarantine, even though it's quarantining the healthy and not just the sick, which is ridiculous. There's an interesting little pop, sound like a little gunshot. Like, don't know if you heard that. But there's also Section 92 concerning the free movement of people, as well as in trade and commerce, as well as, just being able to cross the border. If you live at Boundary Street in Tweed Heads and the Queensland border is the other side of Boundary Street, like across the road, or vice versa. If you're in Coolangatta, which is a northern part of Tweed Heads, Coolangatta, their sister towns, cities, whichever way you call it, then, you can literally walk across the road 5 metres, 10 metres, 20 metres, whatever it is, and be in New South Wales. And that's just one example. You also have those internal border lockdowns, or whatever you call it. Like in Victoria, you can only travel 5 kilometres at the moment unless you're a government worker or essential worker or whatever. And thank you, Lyndall, Irene, and Debbie. And other sections are Section 117, which is discrimination of residents from one state or territory to another. So, like we heard on ABC Radio yesterday about a pig farm in Victoria that literally, I forget what figures they used, but say half their workers were actually living in South Australia just across the border, and they applied to have their workers cross the border because they've got specialised workers and whatever. Some of the people have been working there for say 30, 40 years, and they have been prevented from doing so. So that's one example of Section 117. And we also have Section 51, subsection 23A, which does exist despite where is he from? There was a Dean of Law from some university, I forget their name, it was like Misco or some interesting name like that, and they had an article on the ABC claiming that the government can do mandatory vaccination, mandatory medicine, which they cannot. He also claimed in that article, and this is paraphrased, that there's no constitutional prohibition against it. I suggest that the Dean bothers to read the Constitution. In Section 51, subsection 23A, it quite clearly states that the government can provide dental and medical services, and then it literally has in parentheses, so long as that does not constitute civil conscription. And there is some case law interpreting that, and I state that it's civil conscription to have mandatory medicine. You just had ScoMo on the news yesterday, I think it was, announcing that he was going to make the COVID vaccine, the AstraZeneca one, and I nearly actually worked for AstraZeneca via a contracting company, which maybe you should ask yourself why these big pharmaceutical companies employ people via third parties. And, you've got also tests about are they really employees or are they contractors, which there's case law about, but try not to bore people. But it was very dodgy, and I do have information in relation to the training for selling pharmaceuticals for that particular company, even though I'm sure they all probably do the same thing. And basically, you're not allowed to bribe doctors, but you can take them out to lunch and pay for their lunch to have a chat to them, because that's when they're most susceptible or most willing to have a chat about doing certain things and buying certain drugs and do off-label prescriptions. Off-label prescriptions are where there's a drug and it's approved for use ABC, and to say there's a side effect of I'll use a real example. So there's a particular antidepressant, and one of the side effects of that is that people notice less headaches. So therefore, off-label prescriptions would include that someone that has severe migraines, severe tension headaches, that kind of thing, gets prescribed an antidepressant, which has as a side effect suicide, believe it or not. So apparently suicide's a better option than having a headache, according to doctors that would do off-label prescriptions of that particular medication, but because the side effect is less headaches. So what else did I want to cover? Oh yeah, the importance of my case is basically if the case gets removed to the High Court, and if the High Court determines, there's certain questions that they can answer yes or no to. One is mandatory vaccination, does that constitute medical conscription? or civil conscription within a medical or dental service provision. And if it is, then that's completely prohibited, as one example. And that applies to every state and territory in Australia. And then as another example about the border closures, if the border closures are illegal in one state, then they're likely illegal in every state and territory. You can have quarantine, of course, of people done by the federal government, but that should be for things like the Ruby Princess, where you have people coming into the country from overseas and there is an outbreak on a ship or a plane or whatever. But that is not the same thing as just putting up, concrete blockades at border crossings and having police there and army there on the streets. Where are your papers? Even you have these stupid things where if you want to cross the border, you print out a border pass. This is for Queensland, and you got a A4 sheet of paper blocking your vision when you're driving. How ridiculous is that? Lyndall says they've apparently paid billions out of court re their vaccines. So that's in relation to USA. They have paid out something like $10 billion for vaccine injuries, and they do have a lot of dodgy things with that vaccine court. The manufacturer does not actually pay the fees. Say if you had I'm in a car at the moment, so Takata airbags. So they had faulty airbags that when they would deploy, that they would shoot bits of metal or glass or something like that into people and killed a bunch of people. They, as a company, are responsible for, replacing those airbags and also for payouts because it's a consumer law issue. Yet with vaccines, they're exempt. So how ridiculous is that? Also, with my particular case, there are some people raising money for stopping, say, no jab, no play in South Australia or other little aspects of mandatory vaccinations, whereas mine covers the field. What's the point of doing 50 different cases for one for no jab, or no jab, no pay, one for no jab, no play, one for no jab, no job, that kind of thing, when it can all be knocked on the head in one go, hopefully. And, if it doesn't get knocked on the head in one go, then sure, go for the little tiny chunks, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. But, what's the point of that if the whole thing just gets knocked down? And also, with the COVID directions in Queensland, besides the constitutional issues, so the Constitution obviously applies to every state and territory, but there are also particular nuances within each state and territory, such as in Queensland, there's particular ways where the COVID directions become exempted subordinate legislation, as an example, or just simplify things and call it a regulation, so an actual law, instead of, it just being the chief medical officer saying, look, you have to stay 1.5 metres away from everyone because everyone's poxy or whatever. And that's not saying with sick people, that's saying with healthy people. It's so disheartening to see how society's changed in, what is it, 8 months, 9 months, something like that. Australia was a place known for its love of freedom. And then, all of a sudden you walk past someone and they look at you like they want to murder you behind their mask. You can just tell in their eyes because you're not wearing a mask, because you're not sick at all. And people aren't being a society, basically, or being civilized. A mark of civilization is the interaction of people between each other. Even from when I was a little kid, people used to walk down the street and say hi to everyone that walked past. And Irene says, if I was in Melbourne right now, I'd have 15 minutes to get home. It's pretty funny. But it's funny in that, you've got to joke about things so that they don't affect you so much, but unfortunately it's really not that funny when you look at what's happened to society. But like I was saying, when I was a little kid, you used to walk past people and they'd be like, "Oh, hi, how you going?" That kind of thing. And then even, probably a year ago, that's not so common, but that used to be a trademark of Australia. And I found it funny when I went to Finland once. I've been there twice, once in the summer and once in winter. I think it was winter first. But I was doing my normal Australian thing and saying hi to people walking past and smiling at people and whatever, just acknowledging that they're humans. And the security guard going to come talk to me, I think. I'm in a car park at a school and just trying to get somewhere quiet to do this. So that'll be interesting. Let's see what happens. Anyway, so, I was walking past and smiling at people, acknowledging they're human and getting funny, dirty looks, because in Finland they don't actually, do that. And it's strange for them to do that. So, just see what this security guard's doing. Just flip the camera so you can see. Well, you can't see anything because of a big circle of light. Anyway, so do you have any other questions, anyone? I was going to say something that I asked people to remind me about, but I think it was just about the Section 78B notices. And by the way, they've gone out. I've gotten responses from the federal one and maybe South Australia and Western Australia in terms of saying that they don't wish to intervene in a court. And then also other states and territories just saying, hey, look, we've sent it to the Solicitor General for their opinion and, we'll get back to you. So just quickly scroll up and look at some of these messages. So, as I said, it's very hard to read this screen with the bright light, but Glenn says, we as one couldn't afford financially to take this on. How are you financing this? And could you use help? And if you lose? So I do have a fundraiser which has been shadow banned on Facebook. But if you go onto GoFundMe.com, does it have a .au on the end? I think it's just GoFundMe. Just type GoFundMe in Google, it'll come up. And then write 19 space 84 COVID directions case. You'll see a link or a fundraiser via GoFundMe for me. And that is to basically indemnify me if I lose. So I have had things like court, application fees and whatnot, or filing fees technically. You've got a lot of other costs as well. So how can I put it? So I have talked to a barrister as well as a solicitor. That barrister was too busy, but then was going to get another barrister involved. And then there was a mini hearing back on the 31st of last month, so that's when he didn't have time, but they need a copy of the transcript from the Magistrates Court, which is what's been appealed, in order to basically make a determination if they want to be involved or not, of course. I did apply months ago for the transcript via Ausscript. They do the transcripts and the audio for all of Queensland, as well as I think all of the federal courts and maybe one other state. The security guard's coming, just driving more now. He's probably just gonna drive past. That's all right. I guess he's trying to check if I had someone robbing the school or something like that. But of course I wouldn't. But anyway, so with the Ausscript thing, so I can turn my headlights off too, by the way. So flattening my battery. So with Ausscript, I applied months ago for the transcript and audio, and then I called, say, a month later or something like that, or a few weeks later, and they said they didn't have the application to redo it. So then I redid it with a fee waiver. Then I was told, hey, with the fee waiver, so that's basically if you're a poor person, that you can get the stuff for free instead of paying hundreds of dollars. And then I was told, hey, look, after we receive the application with the fee waiver, we send that to the Queensland Attorney General's office. Then they have, it was either 10 days or maybe it was 10 working days, i.e. 2 weeks, to make a determination. Then after that, even though I applied for the next day, they basically said, hey, because if you do get it for free with the fee waiver, then we will make you wait 10 days. And then I finally got accepted for the fee waiver, and then it said you are scheduled to receive this on, what day was that? Maybe the 15th? Wasn't the 15th, was it? I think it was 2 days before the Surfers Paradise, the Gold Coast rally that was in Cascade Gardens, which was maybe about a week ago. Let's just call it that for the sake of things, so I'm not waffling on too long. Anyway, so it said you will receive this on Thursday, whatever date it was last week, at 5 p.m. Then the next day, the Friday, I received an email saying, hey, look, are you sure that that's correct with the case name, date, location, judge, blah, 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 because it doesn't exist. And this is very paraphrased, so I'm not sure what happened magically to the audio, if, something dodgy is happening or not. And then I sent back, yes, it's correct, here is a judgment, which I think I already sent them in the first place. I don't think that was part of the application, just from memory, but don't quote me on that one. And, then they're going to take another 10 days to post it, if they can even find it. And so far, they have not informed me that they've found it. So apparently the case never actually happened. It just magically disappeared. And then with the funds, so they're to indemnify me. So I don't have legal representation at the moment. I do have a Juris Doctor law degree though. I'm not yet a lawyer. Should be by the end of the year. But anyway, in terms of the funds, they're for a specific purpose, to indemnify me if I lose. So basically, if I lose, then I have to pay a hell of a lot of money. If the court, awards costs against me, and normally they do, there's a saying that costs follow the event. And there are some exceptions to that, such as, if it's a public interest case, which I believe this is anyway, because it's not me doing it just for me, it's doing it for everyone, because these lockdowns are wrong. And some people want to say, oh, look, you're going to kill old granny or whatever, which is just completely ridiculous. But you have places like in Stockholm, Sweden, the capital, which is pretty funny because some of you would have heard of the saying Stockholm Syndrome, which is basically when someone's kidnapped or trapped or whatever, then sometimes they fall in love with their captors. So you have a lot of people who are, trapped by the government, and they're still saying, the government's doing what's best for us. We'll just do it for this 2 weeks. We'll just do it for this 2 months. We'll just do it for this 2 years. And, a lot of people are so far gone that they need a big shake up, unfortunately, in order for them to see what's really happening, the forest for the trees, as the saying goes. And basically, with the police application tomorrow, so the police, their legal arm, is representing the sergeant who sued me illegally in her private capacity. I submit, and I do say I submit a lot, which I sort of have to, but, things are before the court, and it's up to the court to determine, but they are trying to get the case thrown out. They claim that the district court has no power to hear appeals from the magistrates court concerning the original act that the police officer illegally, I submit, in her own private capacity sued me under, which is the Peaceful Assembly Act. And then I received advice from because then I served Dr. Jeanette Young, as well as the state of Queensland. So the state of Queensland's represented by Crown Law, and Crown Law is also representing Dr. Jeanette Young, I was advised today, and they, advised that they have had the benefit of reading the submissions of the QPS barrister slash legal team. So there's solicitor. The person who I'm suing is actually a prosecutor herself, and then they have a separate barrister. Then, so they've had the benefit of reading those submissions. They agree with those submissions and don't wish to add anything extra, which is helpful to receive more than one day before the event. But at least they're doing that. It would be worse and probably grounds for an adjournment if today, one day before, if they provided another 50-page document saying our outlines of submissions are XYZ, and anyway, so it'd be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. And of course I'll let everyone know, so I'll go through some of these comments. Luke says, part of the 1.5 metre distancing agenda is also because the people tracking software has difficulty separating people for ID if they are too close, I believe, which is what happened when I used it in manufacturing back in 2007 or 2009. I did see an interesting article, I think it was on Facebook, like a TV, what would that be? Like a news excerpt or something about AI with this, surveillance software about it had like little green triangles if some people saw that, and when the people are within 1.5 meters it goes red and does an alert, and basically you have the computers monitoring things and they just send the relevant bits to the police or whatever for that particular application. They were just talking about using it in a workplace, not to fine people, but to work out, bottlenecks in a business where people are walking too close, that kind of thing. So it's all very dystopian. Lyndall says, it's very sick, like a mass psychosis. Yep, so obviously that's about the Stockholm Syndrome. It's just like normal elections too, that, there are a lot of people that are rusted on Labor or welded on Liberals, as they're respectively known, where they'd vote for a stick if that was a candidate. And, maybe a stick would do a better job than a lot of the politicians, but you get the point. If there was Chopper Reed and he was like, vote one Chopper, otherwise I'll chop you up, without it being an actual threat, but just like as a slogan or something, or I'll chop up Parliament, as in, he'll sort out Parliament, then people would vote for him. And, maybe Chopper would do an actual better job than some people, even if you have to contact him via a seance with a Ouija board. But, you get the point. And then there's also the other people that are swing voters. There's also other more intelligent people, I would argue, who actually look at who the candidates are in their local area and what they can offer them, what they're going to do for the area, what they're going to do for the country or state, That's how I prefer people to be. But, people are entitled to do things how they want. And also, basically, a lot of people don't have time to sort through the candidates, even though it's a very important thing. But, I appreciate that some people, they wake up at 6 in the morning, get to work, work all day, get home at 8 p.m. and they're buggered. But, is it also Stockholm Syndrome where people say, Labor, they suck this year. I'm going to vote for Liberals. I'm going to teach Labor a lesson. And then a year later they're saying, the Liberals suck. I'm going to vote for Labor next time. Albert Einstein's credited with saying that insanity, or the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. He might well have stolen that saying, like he did allegedly steal the theory of general relativity when he was working in a Swiss patent office. Supposedly, a story goes that some other dude, I forget if he was Serbian maybe, but someone put in a patent at the Swiss patent office that young Albert was working at, and apparently he just changed the name on there and then filed it as his own patent. Something like that. But anyway, I'll read some more comments. Lee says, so many need to wake up. Glenn says, probably look forward to stuff going missing. Didn't get it, lost it. Yeah, so magically, I was using for time management, basically a program on a computer. I forget what it's called exactly, but all of that stuff disappeared. So I had, hey, look, on this day I have to, create a Section 78B notice to send it to the Attorney Generals, then serve it on, the Attorney General of X state, Y territory, blah, blah, blah. I have to do these calls, I have to do that call, all of this stuff related to the court case, and magically that's just disappeared. And now the program just starts up as if nothing exists. I can't find a file saved anywhere. So, maybe that's just a coincidence. Today I was having a lot of trouble. Basically, I have to use my phone as a mobile hotspot to a laptop, and then the laptop wasn't sending emails when I'm writing replies to the other party's legal teams. Then I tried resetting the phone, that still didn't work. I tried someone else's phone that was kind enough to lend me their phone, that didn't work. Then I reset the computer, all this other stuff. When I was doing that, which might have been about sometime between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m, I guess, literally, even though I didn't call anyone, I heard someone's voice on my phone. It wasn't on loudspeaker or anything, so I didn't hear what they said exactly, but I literally heard someone's voice on my phone. Then I picked the phone up thinking, it must have, auto-dialed someone or something like that, and it doesn't have a record of any phone call. So, is that done on purpose to let me know that I'm being listened to? I don't know. Is it just a coincidence and it was just a bug with the phone company or something like that? Who knows? I'm just looking at other comments. So Lee says, yes, I saw that too. So I assume that was about the green triangle tracking AI security stuff. Paris says mind control. Brian says independent 100%. So I am making my own political party that's essentially a party of independence called Reset Parliament that has been set back because of this with the authorised protests that I was going to have, and with COVID exemptions, then I was going to launch a political party. So it was not only against the illegal lockdown, but it was also a rally for the party. And with the party, it's unlike any that's ever existed as far as I can find, in that instead of it being a party, I guess you could say that old-fashioned parties were more like it, but I'll get into that in a second. So with my party, instead of binding members to XYZ policies, then I would rather have people that are good, honest, helpful people that can be gotten along with, people that don't have, there are people out there, unfortunately, like I think the attitude is unfortunate, but some people will be your best friend as long as you agree with them and say yes and yes, yes, yes. And then as soon as you find something you disagree with them, then it's like, hell on earth. They want to be demons and try and, set you up or get you in trouble or abuse you, or call you every name under the sun, so to speak. I don't want people like that. I'd rather, the parliament be a representative parliament where people, you pick good people and they do the right thing by the people, instead of saying, there might be, I'll just use an example. So just say if there's a traditional modern style political party and they receive, so much dollars from donations from big pharmaceutical companies, as an example. You might well have a person within that party who doesn't want to have a mandatory vaccine using adenovirus from chimpanzees that has been modified with COVID-19, or not COVID-19, that's the disease, but SARS coronavirus number 2 spike proteins. And, they might well be a scientist or a doctor and think that's a really bad idea, but because they're in a party and their party says, hey, we're going to make this vaccine mandatory, despite it being illegal in the Constitution, by the way, then, that person either goes with that ruling and has to vote to support the mandatory vaccination with something that may well be very harmful to people and may not be very effective. And they either do that or they kicked out of the party and then ran against by that party at the next election and then get beaten by the party's mass resources. And that the big parties make the rules and they make them bias in favour of the big parties. We have such things as there's like 4% and 6% depending on, if it's a state election or if it's a federal election. So you need 4% or 6% of first preference formal votes in order to get electoral funding, as an example. So if you're Joe Smith, who's, a school teacher or something, and you think you have something to offer as an independent and offer the area, you go in the election and you get 3,999 votes, and you needed 4,000 votes to get 4%, then all the money you've spent is gone and you don't get a refund for that. But if you're a party, the big parties, they're guaranteed to get electoral funding. Also, like for New South Wales state elections, as an example, the last time, what's this? Wait a second, oh, okay, I think it's just a message that's saying I've got to scroll down. But in New South Wales, for instance, how it used to be a few years ago, probably still is, but if you're an independent and you pay, a university or anyone else for policy development, you could not get that returned as electoral funding, even if you won the election. But if you're in a political party, then you do. So how ridiculous is that? So basically, there's a lot of advantages of independence in terms of, you're not bound to represent, XYZ business or XYZ union or even the party itself, that you're there to represent the people who are in the electorate, whether they vote for you or if they're people who didn't vote for you, but, their team lost, they still need representation. But there's every single election, the big parties, Labor and Liberals, and their little minor parties, coalition ones, like the National Party in Queensland, it's the Liberal National Party, so they're merged, and the Greens are, arguably a feeder party for the Labor Party, then, they come out and they say, this is particularly Labor Party and Liberal parties, and they say, it doesn't matter how you voted in the past because those elections are over and that doesn't really matter. But this election, it's critical that you must not vote for an independent. Even vote for the other guy or girl. As long as you don't vote for independent, it's better to have a Labor government than if we Liberal Party lose and get independents in and vice versa. And this is very paraphrased, but you get the idea. And, it's garbage, but it does trick people. A lot of people are tricked into thinking that independents don't actually have any power in Parliament. Yet we saw that when Julia Gillard was elected with less seats than Tony Abbott back in, when was that? 2010, something like that. Then you had Rob Oakeshott, Tony Windsor, and there was Catter as well, and there might have been one other particular independent, and they held the balance of power. So they basically said to, Labor Party and the Liberal Party, hey, give me X, Y, Z and whatever, and we're negotiating for the best deal for their area. That's why Armidale and Tamworth, and also I think it was Taree, received the first NBN broadband in Australia from memory. Or at least when it was rolled out properly. There might have been some NBN, in Sydney or whatever, but not paid for directly by the government, as an example. But parties have a massive advantage in terms of, besides the ones that they give themselves when they make the laws, but in organisational capacity and organisational professionalism. So with Reset Parliament, I want to combine the best features of both and avoid the negative features of both, having independents and parties. So just scroll down again. So Jody points out that Scott Morrison has a lot to answer to or answer for, and where we go one, we go all. Lee says about Charlie Ward. I don't recall the name Charlie Ward, but we could have an interesting conversation. Yeah, so I'm happy, Lee, for you to pass this video on to Charlie and, get him to contact me. I assume Charlie's a male. It could be a female. It's a male and female name. But, if they contact me sometime tomorrow or after, say, midday tomorrow, that's fine. Oh, it's Charles Ward on YouTube. Yeah, so Charles is a man. I take it. Orlando says, are we talking about Dan Andrews? So basically I have a case currently in sorry, I'm losing my voice too, in the Queensland District Court, but it can be sent to the High Court from there, and even if it's not, if the COVID rules, directions, border closures, quarantining the healthy instead of the sick, and mandatory vaccines are declared, unlawful in Queensland, even without saying about constitutional things, but I do have constitutional arguments in there, then it ends up applying to Victoria. So basically it's win in Queensland, then win Australia-wide, and then, some other countries will be looking at my case and be like, hey, look, just say if they're New Zealand as an example. Hey, look, this dude, Arjay Martin, he had a case in Australia and got these COVID directions wiped out in all of Australia as an example of what could happen. And then apply that to their own country. So literally the case can liberate the world, as in the Western world. I'm sure a lot of countries that, if they got King Masood, or just make up a name, and he's an absolute monarch, a tyrant, whatever, probably doesn't really care. But, the Western world is pretty connected, particularly the common law countries. And within that, particularly, we have Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the UK are all highly interconnected. And really, Australia is a self-governing colony of the UK. It's in our constitution under covering clause, as it's incorrectly called, but really section 8 of the constitution, or of the Constitution Act, says Australia is a self-governing colony. The preamble also points out that Australia is a possession of the Queen. It also has in there that New Zealand's supposed to be a state of Australia, and New Zealand didn't have a constitution until recently. That'd be funny, send this video to Jacinta Ardern and say, aren't you supposed to be a state of Australia? But anyway, the idea is that really Canada, New Zealand, Australia are colonies of Great Britain and have equal standing. We did have people who, like Larissa Waters, who was a Green senator, who was booted out of Parliament, and Malcolm Roberts. Don't know what that noise was. Sort of sounded like keys in someone's pocket, or like a chain holding their wallet or keys or something. You can't really see out there either. It's pretty dark. Woo! There's blue light over there. But what was I saying? Yeah. So anyway, we're basically a colony of Britain. Is how it's supposed to be, and Larissa Waters, Malcolm Roberts, etc. were removed. But really, now questions over Darren Hinch about being a Kiwi. Was he actually removed? I forget. I think he might have quit Parliament, or maybe there was an election in between. And anyway, really those people do have rights as British subjects. It says throughout the Constitution nothing about citizens, but British subjects, that they should really have been allowed in Parliament. But really it should be reciprocated, and Australians should be able to run for New Zealand Parliament if they live there, and in the Canadian Parliament and the UK Parliament. And really in the UK, they can, because every citizen of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, as well as some other places like Fiji, St Kitts and Nevis, Kiribati, whatever, are classed as Commonwealth citizens. And you can actually vote in the UK if you're an Australian citizen living there for Parliament. Sorry again for losing my voice. And I'll just scroll down again. So Luke also saw the biometric software on TV. So I don't actually have a TV, one that works anyway. Haven't really watched TV for many years, except like if you visit someone's house or whatever. So they'll be able to track who is close enough to pass messages, etc. if things get more serious. There's a gender, I believe. And also, society also gets broken down by these social distancing measures and whatever. Try and get a date on Tinder or Bumble or something now, with people wearing a gas mask. It's like a funny meme where they've got a little girl standing with a mother, and it says like 2025, and it's a 4-year-old girl, and it says, "Mummy, what did Daddy look like?" And the mum says, "I don't know, sweetie, he was wearing a mask." Some of you will like that humour, others probably don't appreciate it, but I think it's funny. As I said before, if you don't joke about things, then they can affect you more. So Lyndall says biometrics will eventually be able to read your bioprint, so to speak. They won't necessarily need your face. Orlando says it's not about libraries or labour. I think he means it must be autocorrect. I get autocorrected all the time to incorrect things. So it's not about Liberals or Labor. It's about who is got the best interests in Australians in mind. People, lemmings, need to wake up. We're not sheep. We're all being brain dead. It's not funny. etc. So with Labor and Liberals, as an example, and it's not just about them, there's plenty of people in Parliament that aren't standing up for anyone. Why is it up to some dinky-die Aussie guy, being myself, unfunded, I can't even get costs at the moment. If I was a qualified lawyer, I could get costs for my own case, which maybe down the track, things can happen like that. But, why is it up to me? I'm not complaining, not complaining specifically, but just about general society. Why is it up to me to have to risk all my wealth I've ever had and, all the wealth I'll ever have if I lose? Probably if I get, $1 million high court, judgment against me in terms of costs. But why is it up to me to have to take these things on? I'm doing more for the people than people that are elected. We had Pauline Hanson say months ago that she would take Anastasia Palaszczuk's government to the High Court over the closure of the borders. Yet, what happened to that? I appreciate Pauline saying she was going to do it, but surely she should follow up on it. It shouldn't just be up to me to do everything. And, hopefully I don't lose and hopefully we all win. But if I do lose, then I'm bankrupted, I'm stuffed, basically. And then I won't be able to become a lawyer because you can't be a bankrupted lawyer. They might do it that, Mr. Martin, you can apply for admission in another 10 years' time, something like that, so long as you don't owe the government money in terms of costs anymore. But, why is it up to me? Why aren't people in Parliament doing their bloody job and sticking up for people? And, defending the Constitution as well. It's not just directly about the people, but they're unlawfully acting in an abusive office. They're sworn to, really, the Queen, but as a side thing... sorry, I'm just getting a message. Might have to check that. I'm not sure if the live will stop. Sorry, I just got to write, I'm live now. I will answer in 1 min if you come on. Oops. On there. So I'm just writing to someone, Arjay Martins. So I'm typing one finger for Australians page. So I just put this down so I can type a bit quicker, or just change hands at least. Yeah, so I'll just, oops, is it still live? I hope so. Yeah, so I'll just wait for that person to get on. And then I'll answer their question. But, why isn't the Liberal Party in Queensland, Liberal National Party, saying, hey, open the bloody borders? It's illegal that you have closed them. Why isn't the Labor Party in New South Wales saying the same thing? Obviously because both parties are doing the same thing, acting to the same plans, if you want to discuss it that way. And, why should we vote for either of them, really, when they're just abusing their office? Who died and made the government god? Government, just philosophically or whatever, was basically... And this is like mixing a bit of Friedrich Bastiat. He had a book called The Law. He was a Frenchman from memory, who was, a writer back in 1800 something like that, and he wrote a book called The Law, and basically he argued that, and it was around the same time as communism was probably becoming popular, so the communists basically were saying, this is very, very paraphrased, that, hey, look, property doesn't exist. You shouldn't have property. The only reason there's property is because of government made this artificial concept called property, and therefore it shouldn't exist. And then, I can waffle on about the 6 stages of communism if people really want, but, I'm just simplifying things, even though they call it the 5 stages, but really there's 6 stages. But anyway, so then Frederick Bastiat, say in 1870 something, wrote a book, and it was called The Law, and it basically said, no, that concept is completely wrong. People own property, and they created government in part to protect the property they had. And then also the government says, hey, look, we rule by the consent of the people, even though they don't really care about that. It's just, some pretty words. That's how it's treated. But basically, even Max Egan said it, because, I've been saying it for years, but otherwise people think I'm stealing his work. But Max Egan, Jamie McIntyre, Kim Burke, and Dave Oneggs, or Oniglio, went on, when was that? Saturday, and there was a big rally at Cascade Gardens in the Gold Coast, which is just near the casino kind of area, Broadwater, whatever. And Max Egan was there, and then, as he pointed out, and I've been saying it for years too, but problem is, because I normally say it a particular way, but then he said it a particular way, but now I'm confusing the two in my mind, so it'll probably come out stupidly. But basically, if the government exists and they were given my power, or the power of my forefathers or whatever, transferred some power over to punish wrongdoers, that kind of thing, then if I don't have the power to kill someone or lock them up or whatever, then how can that power be transferred to the government, which the government's an artificial entity? But anyway, I'll just scroll down to some things. Jody says they're trying to control us, for all of Australia not to have a voice. Sorry about my voice again. Hey, it's working. Ha ha ha. I won't have a voice soon. They're trying to shut us up. That phone thing happened to me a bit last night, freaked me out a bit, so it must be that, I explained how I just had my phone near me and was trying to send these emails to the other parties' law teams, legal teams, whatever. Then I think also a message to the district court. Then all of a sudden I heard a voice on my phone, and it was definitely coming from my phone. And then when I picked it up, I couldn't hear anything. I checked the messages or in the call log and whatever, and I didn't accidentally call anyone. No one was supposed to be on the phone. Lyndall says her phone's been whacked since she got on the 5G campaign. She thinks she's surveilled or something. You probably are, maybe. I can't say probably, you possibly are. GG says, love this guy, Irene, thank you. Orlando, wait a second, that phone thing happened to me 4 days ago. A guy's voice came over my convo saying hello to me, and the girl was talking about Dan Andrews. See, and many years ago, when cordless phones, as in cordless house phones, came out, then you could actually hear other people's conversations sometimes if they had the same channel selected. But we've got mobile phones now, and it's not supposed to be what it is. Luke says they're currently building a new generation quantum supercomputer, which will be AI and will potentially do super fast predictive stuff as well. So in other words, it sounds like the Minority Report movie. He continues, both physics-based and subatomic level almost, and psychologically profiling from all the info they have been collecting for years. I don't doubt that. Glenn says, all you will need is good, honest, intelligent people, knowledgeable. No, not everybody sees it the same. Don't want to stir the pot, but sooner or later the cream is gone, and you're left with the chocolate ice cream icons. So there's a funny saying someone once said about melting pots, because, New York, as an example, is always called a melting pot, or has been for 20 years, 30 years. And then someone said, yeah, the thing with a melting pot is the scum floats to the top and everyone at the bottom gets burnt. So I thought that was very apt. Lyndall says about gathering data. Peter says chase truth. Lyndall says, how long do I have for the indemnity and what could the cost get up to? So it depends what level of court it goes to. So it's already been a magistrate's court and now it's in a district court. I have asked multiple times because, I can't mention things until costs are mentioned, because things are without prejudice, offers to settle, that kind of thing, despite that the police have in their submissions to the court already mentioned about these things, but I have to be extra careful. But I've already asked them what they expect the cost to be. They refuse to answer. It could be something like, and this is just possible, as an example, I don't know the exact figure, but just say $50,000 for the Sergeant Arundel as a party, then say 50 grand for the state of Queensland, 50 grand for the chief medical officer or chief health officer of Queensland. So it could be 150 grand just for the district court part. If it then gets appealed, then there's more money again, and each level of court you have more and more basically costs that can be claimed without it being indemnity costs. So you have a thing called the scale of costs, and that says, hey, look, per hour, then, or what's a better example? Just say, barrister can charge $4,000 a day in this court. They can charge, $10,000 a day, 20,000, 30,000, whatever it is, for the High Court or whatever. So the higher you go up, the more money can be charged. So if it does get removed to the High Court, then, cost could be more than $1 million against me. And that could potentially be from each party. With the Chief Health Officer and the State of Queensland, they're both going through Crown Law. Crown Law has taken up her, legal thing, so that might well, limit it to, $2 million or whatever, if it's $1 million each. But, it's a lot of money. Someone's calling me, which I can't answer. And then I did get a question. The one that I was trying to finger type, was something like, do you know if the COVID directions have been gazetted in other states, and in particular in Victoria? Just wait till the motorbikes go past. So I know for New South Wales that the COVID directions have been gazetted, or at least changes to them. I haven't had a chance to go back to when it was originally declared, but New South Wales under Brad Hazzard, so in New South Wales, the directions of the Health Minister, whereas in Queensland it is the directions of the Chief Health Officer. In Western Australia and South Australia, it's the directions of the police, as an example. Or technically for South Australia, they have the dude who's in charge of the police, whose name's Grantley Stevens, and there's a funny thing with that, in that his original emergency declaration may well be invalid, because it goes something like, I, Grantley Stevens, whatever it is, do hereby declare under section blah 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 of the blah 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 Act an emergency. Sorry, there's noise out my window again. Emergency situation. This is very paraphrased, but literally he probably didn't even read it when he signed it, or did not put attention to it, because he did not even spell his name properly. His name's Grantley, which is Grantley, and it doesn't have the E in it. And when you have a weird name, such as I do, Arjay, Arjay, then you notice, particularly when your name's misspelt. So it's not like his name was Jonathan and he didn't notice an extra N. So that shows me that, or makes me think, that he either didn't sign it himself, someone else signed it, and that there is no emergency declaration in South Australia, no valid one, or that he just signed it at someone's behest, or, was just shoved in front of him and told sign it. Or maybe, he's a good guy and actually noticed the spelling mistake or did it on purpose of his own name, and then signed it so that someone smart enough could find the missing piece of the puzzle. So in South Australia, they might not even have, again, not only the constitutional issues, but the, all of the COVID directions are done in a state of emergency, or a state of disaster. They're calling it now, as a bigger thing than emergency in Victoria. And if that hasn't been declared properly, then, all of the things are illegal, even if they, and unlawful, inoperative, whatever way you want to look at it, even if they, work gazetted, as an example, and ignoring that they're unconstitutional to begin with. So I hope I answered that person's questions. I am stuck up here with a whole bunch of other things. So someone just told me that they can't see the live anymore. Maybe I'm starting to be shadow banned. It appears that I'm still on. So I'll just continue anyway. So Orlando says Dan Andrews is destroying us in Victoria, which I agree with, and we need help. He is controlling us and lying left, right and centre. We can't even walk our streets at 8 p.m. till 5 a.m. There was also a Sky News article or little video that had, Dan Andrews was on TV all the time saying we need to do this harsh lockdown, stage 4 lockdown, because 1 in 4 people that were supposed to be in quarantine were checked and they weren't in quarantine. And it turned out it was a lie. And a lie by misleading, because apparently they did 29,000 from memory checks on these people, and they're only prosecuting something like, was it 400? So that's not 1 in 4. And then there's the police officer, saying in a press conference that they used the clip on Sky News for that. I think it was the Alan Jones one, and I'm just getting news across that Advocate Me, that Serena Tefaha has launched a class action. So that'll be interesting to see what that's about, because she was working on a few different ones. But anyway, so what was I saying? Getting tired now, but so he said it was 1 in 4 people, and it's not that at all. The officer said, it's whatever it was. Might have even been 42. Someone else can correct me there if they saw it. I did repost it on RJ Martin's for Australians page, but there's either 42 or 442, something like that, infringement notices out of these 29,000. And the officer points out that people had lawful reasons to not be at their house, such as getting medical treatment. So, Daniel Andrews is, in my opinion, a deceitful person for saying that. If he knew the actual facts, it is possible that someone was misfeeding him information, or that he's too stupid to understand what the information was. But otherwise, he may well be, a liar, a deceitful person. Robert says, our first politically created shithole is Victoria. Lee says, I know it's freaking me out a little that they can see you in the car, but you can't see them because of the light. Is the door locked? So the door's not locked, but I do have the window open so it doesn't just reflect the light too. So, it is possible someone could just come in the window, but there have been a few noises sounding like someone's like hiding behind that bush or something like that. There were a couple of times. There was a security guard that went past earlier, so maybe it's him just checking what the hell I'm doing, but who knows. But, wouldn't it be funny if I get bashed up or something on a live video? That'd be interesting. Someone just reaches through and does something. But thanks for your thoughts. Just scrolling. Eddie's and Martin say contact them and find out. Contact Pauline. She has a big mouth and isn't scared of anyone. Yeah, so I think other people have already, asked Pauline why she didn't follow through with that. And because I've got my case, and really she doesn't have to anymore. But, it would have been helpful if she or someone else bothered challenging these things before me. So I started protesting in April and doing videos, including telling people, informing people that under the COVID directions it says you can exercise, so why not protest and exercise? A few weeks later they had Exercising My Rights come out in Sydney. Also maybe a week after I did my video, or a few days or something like that, they started having big protests in the USA and Germany. And so Lisa says Scott Morrison should not allow these border closures. The premiers have too much power. Yeah, so they have the colour of power or the colour of law, as in they pretend they have the power and they just do what they want. And that's why it's important to challenge these things, because I submit that they don't have this power to close the borders as they're doing. I have gone through with various legal videos, these TINLA videos. Good one is TINLA 16, which is references or half the references for some of the videos I did before. And that includes, about border closures. As an example, you had the High Court case in 1988, which is Cole and Whitfield, also known as the Tasmanian lobsters case or the crayfish case. And part of that was talking about the free movement of people, and that there could be some reasonable exceptions to that, such as saying you cannot walk in the middle of a highway, but that besides that, people have the right to freely move among the states and territories. I do add territories. A lot of these things, including the Constitution, just say about the states, but, the territories have elevated their legal status with self-governance and Self-Government Act in 1970s, whatever, for the ACT and the Northern Territory. And even Norfolk Island has its own little government there. Tony says, unfortunately, we have a three-ring circus for a government is, as in government, is a greedy one to... we've been complying to their BS so far, but losing my voice and my lips are going lazy and everything. But if push comes to shove, we won't be putting up with the BS for much longer. Only the sheeple will follow with their lies and crap. No vaccines to be mandatory on anyone. Lyndall says NWO, they're all bought and paid for. Matt gives a thumbs up. Lee says they're all corrupt. They pretend they are fighting for us, but they aren't. That's why. Yes, so that again is about why isn't anyone in Parliament, state parliaments, federal parliament, even councils standing up for people. Maybe there are some exceptions, and hopefully there are, but Why aren't their voices being heard? Maybe there's, some little independence, like Anne Bressington was with her New World Order speech or Agenda 21 speech many years ago. That is like a voice in the wilderness. And again, with Reset Parliament, that's another perceived weakness of independence, that they're often ignored. But, within a party structure, you aren't often, or as often, generally speaking. Lee says we need to kick them out. Paul says vote Arjay, thank you. Lee says they forgot they're supposed to be working for us, but they aren't. That's right. Politicians are public servants. Government workers are public servants. We have the situation, such as in Queensland, where you have an unelected person, a bureaucrat, being the chief health officer, who is dictating to people, basically. And that's not saying against her personally or whatever, but why should any bureaucrat have that much power, besides, if you want to call a queen a bureaucrat, or the Governor General? But, we're supposed to have a representative parliament. A lot of people call it a democracy, but really we are a constitutional monarchy with representational features, with democratically elected, supposedly, representatives. But, that's argument. Lee asked what my thoughts are on the straw man, so I will do a video on that later. I've had recent other discussions about that, but basically I say that the straw man concept and the other works of David Wynne Miller, which includes that all courts are admiralty courts / maritime law for every single case, that you have a golden trim on flags for military in every court, that the judge is a ship's captain, that you have birthing certificates, you got the assistui quivi trust. That stuff is made up, it's fake. But I'll do a better video on that, including, probably references later. But obviously with this court case in the morning, then I can't really get into that. And it's also getting late. So Glenn says, if the Constitution still holds up against the might that you're taking on, Hercules, he's going to get his hair cut. Yeah, funny. But maybe, it's like Samson and Delilah. When Samson cut his hair, then he lost all his strength. It was actually not him that cut it, but his wife or girlfriend or whatever she was. But, he did have that last bit of power to push over the pillars and knock in the roof while he killed himself and everyone in the building. So he fears I'm going to be stonewalled at every avenue, in which case could we get an injunction on state legislation or act. So do I actually specifically ask for injunctions? I don't remember. I asked for certain declarations. I don't remember off the top of my head, but because I've been concentrating for the last month and a half on this application by the police where they're trying to get things thrown out, claiming the court doesn't have jurisdiction to hear appeals, which is just ridiculous. I did explain, more accurately what the actually argument is, that it relates to the Peaceful Assembly Act. But, we'll find out about that tomorrow. So phones have a lot to answer for. Sorry I missed the start of your video. That's fine, Lyndall. When the video is finished, you can just rewind it and rewatch it. Lee says, wow. Kerry says, bring out human trafficking, child sex abuse from the government, judges, religion. They're destroying our lives. About time people knew about these abuses. People then could stand up more for their rights and not believe in what the government tells them. Sure. I can't add, child sex crimes or anything to my particular case that's before the courts at the moment, because it's not relevant to things. And I don't mean relevant as in it's not a relevant topic, but that is a good thing for, reset parliamentarians if we get people elected, which we can only ever get elected with your help, and also about things being stonewalled, etc. Basically, the more people that know about this, the harder it is for it to be covered up. So please like, share and subscribe. And, as I said before, you can donate to the indemnity fund. And if I win the case or don't get costs awarded against me, then, that'll just be rolled into other, cases that involve constitutional matters or human rights, that kind of thing. Ruby says, thank you for your actions, Arjay, and whoa, thank you. Kerry can see me, so that must have been when the person said that my video disappeared. Michael says that Bill Gates released the virus, perhaps. Matt says, thanks Arjay, great stuff. Mick says 42 people was the real number. So 42 people was how many people were issued with fines for not being at home with the, their self-isolation, mandatory self-isolation in Victoria, instead of 1 in 4, which would have been, 8,000 odd people. Lee, no, not funny. Ebola says, we have to get back to our sovereignty. I'm just paraphrasing now. Jodie rebooted her phone. She's in so many other groups which were shut down by Facebook. She panicked a bit and thought, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble now. Lee says, yes, she did stand up, so it must be about Pauline Hanson, but there was no High Court case about it, as far as I know, or federal court case or whatever, however she did it. As far as I'm aware, Clive Palmer does have some cases before the courts to do with Western Australia and maybe Section 92 of the Constitution. Luke says the camera can usually see better in the dark than human eyes these days. Yes, I'm reading the rest of the comments. Samson and Goliath instead of David and Goliath. Yeah, me with my messy hair. It's just curly when it gets big, so blame my genetics. Even though, it's kind of cool, but I'm also trying to, funnily enough, maybe grow my hair long to either cover a bald patch or maybe even make a wig, so it's pretty funny. Lyndall points out that I should get some rest, and thanks for what I'm doing. I agree, thank you. And Johnny B. Good's watching, and Arjay. There's another Arjay. I'm Arjay too. I'm Arjay. Arjay. Says that I shall pray for your success. So thank you very much for that. So I am going to bugger off now, and I'll let you know what happens tomorrow. It'll be an epic day. Still have a lot of work to do. Like I said, please like, share, subscribe, share this in all the groups so people know and it gets a word out. And also, if enough people know about it, then they basically, it's harder for the government to remove our rights. Justin wants to know what the live stream's about, because he just joined. You can rewind it when I finish it, but a summary is it's about tomorrow's court case, which, as far as I know, is Australia's first COVID directions are illegal, border restrictions, as in internal ones, are illegal, mandatory vaccination is illegal. You had Scott Morrison say he was going to make the vaccine as mandatory as possible. That's specifically an AstraZeneca one, which involves the adenovirus from chimpanzees, modified, and then made to grow the spike proteins of SARS-CoV, as in coronavirus number 2. One other thing that I forgot to say is there was a guy on ABC radio, was it yesterday that he is a professor at Flinders University. Their team is also working on a vaccine, but it is a synthetic one. It's not a live virus one. And he basically said on ABC radio when he was asked about, hey, look, this is very paraphrased, but should the vaccine be made mandatory? And he said, I would not be taking the vaccine, as in Oxford University AstraZeneca one, and then suggested that it's ineffective. It didn't even work on monkeys that it was tested on, and that it has very bad side effects, potentially, including with the trials. And you can donate to the GoFundMe page if you want. That money I can't use for any, personal purposes. It's just to indemnify me for the case. And if I lose, if I get, $1 million of costs awarded against me in a high court or something like that, it's only at about $2,000. I had an initial goal of $25,000, just, because you have to put a figure, and if you put $2 million, and who the hell's going to donate them because they think it's an impossible thing. And then if I win or don't have costs awarded against me for it being, say, a public interest case, if I am unfortunate enough to lose, which I don't think I should lose, but, that's just my opinion, blah, blah, blah. But then it would be rolled into other court cases that at least have some kind of human rights or constitutionality aspects to it. And then, from there, I'm sure there's lots of different cases that can go with. People can also personally donate to me if they want at paypal.me, so paypal.me / I think it's just Arjay Martin with capital A and capital M. So paypal.me /Arjay Martin, and I'll check that link and put it in the description later on, but you have to bugger off. So Justin says, oh yeah, awesome. Lee, good luck and good on you for doing this. And Kerry, thank you for all your work you are doing, and all the best for tomorrow. As I said, it's a bit hard to read with this bright ring light in my eyes, but you get the point. I would like to thank each and every one of you. Thank you for caring enough to, sign on, and hopefully the message gets out. So thank you very much. Bye.